Hey everyone, and welcome to the Grow Your Life podcast. My name's Jeremiah Krakowski. This podcast is designed to help you get more results in your life and in your business. If you grow in your personal life, your mindset, it affects business. If you grow in business, you make more money, you have more influence, it expands your reach, your territory, all of that. They work hand in hand. And in this, I want to share with you a unique approach at finding your why. It's not cliche. It's not what everybody else does. You know, there's so many great teachings on this. So this is not just me regurgitating what I've heard from other people. I've actually not really listened to much teaching on finding your why. This is something that I've really developed over time from different sources that are unrelated to finding your why to put together a unique teaching that I think will help you in the way that it's helped me and others that I've worked with and coached in this. And so that's why I was almost afraid to put finding your why in this. But I wanted to play it off as kind of a little joke in that. And what it is that, you know, often as people, we are afraid to really do things for the real reasons why we want to do them because of past experiences. You know, we don't go after what we really want and our goals and our destiny because our why is misplaced. And that misplaced why prevents us from actually having the impact of what was planted in us, what was given to us, what we were created for, what we were made for. And so I was having a conversation with a friend of mine this week. His name's Matt. And we were talking about this, finding his why and realizing his was misplaced. And so I want to share with you some of what we talked about that you can apply yourself. You know, he tagged me in a post. He was like, wow, Jeremiah helped me with this. And I was like, okay. I didn't realize it had that much of an impact, but I realized I need to share this with everybody that's in our group. So I want to encourage you, if you're listening to this right now, listen to it as a whole, not just the part. If you hear something that maybe is either triggering, you don't agree with, you don't whatever, two things. Listen through to the end and see if your perspective changes instead of judging it just by a part of it. This should be taken as a whole, not just a part. And also, if you still have questions, join the Grow Your Life community on Facebook, #Grow Your Life. It's a community that's a free mastermind community based around this podcast and the videos that I do on my social media every day for free, where people either share what they're going through, their thoughts, their questions, as well as give input, and we all work together and collaborate to grow in our lives together. My goal with that is actually to create 100,000 people that earn 7 figures in a business that they start in any industry. And so this is a kind of a catalyst for that, the starting place for that. We've already had amazing testimonials of people saying, wow, this has helped me think outside of the box, get more results, start something in a different industry that I didn't even realize I had skill in. And that's part of that process. So in this, I want to help you find your why, but I'm not going to do it in a particular way that most people do. I want you to kind of get a perspective on how over time, your experiences have maybe misplaced your why and misplaced what you're going after, and that how this is actually affecting you negatively in what you do on a daily basis. In fact, I want to give you a perfect example of this. I did this when I recorded this podcast. This is the second recording of this podcast, meaning I pressed record and deleted the first version of this podcast because I realized the first version was actually from a misplaced perspective of the why. And I wasn't speaking truth. I actually wasn't helping people. I was trying to sound right. I was trying to sound intelligent. And in that's where my personal place of my why was coming from. And when I'm not walking in what I was made for, I always try to sound perfect, not say the wrong things. I'm afraid of people misinterpreting me, blah, 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 blah. And it prevents me from actually doing what's inside of me to help other people because I'm afraid of others' opinions. And that's a misplaced why. And so what it is my why, instead of it being how can I help another person get their goals, was misplaced in how can I get personal love and connection myself. And this is where many of us misplace our why, is this. As we're so inward focused towards ourselves, what can I get, that we miss out on actually experiencing way more. See, you'll get that, by the way. I'm going to get what I desire by actually not worrying about that desire and actually going after what I was made for and making a choice. and choosing to speak the truth, regardless of if people don't understand me or misinterpret me. And so that's why in this, many times when we focus our why towards just getting love and connection, we miss out on all that's available for us, because the idea is this, is let me actually draw this on a whiteboard here. Let me see if I have a marker. For those of you that are watching the video, there's my marker. Perfect. Just tossing it around the room. All right, so here's the whiteboard. And in this, what it is when our why, when we go after it, and we're just trying to, this is our world, and we're just trying to get love and connection from other people. We do stuff within the border of this experience. And we never go outside of the border of that, because if we do, we could possibly lose the love and connection that we get inside of that box. When in fact, what we were created for is a giant world 10 times bigger than just that box of love and connection. But we might lose some of the love and connection we get here when there's way more that's out here. Okay? So that's kind of a visual of that. Is think of a circle, a small one with inside of a big one, and we live inside the small circle when there's actually a bigger circle that we can live in once we understand our why. When we have a misplaced why, we're so focused on just ourself, our little world, and how we can get love and connection. And this comes from when we're born. We have a desire to feel love and connection from our parents. Now, unfortunately, I know I probably already lost some people that turned off this podcast at this point because of what I just said. And that's unfortunate. But for those of you that are still here, I want you to stick with me on this. Stick with me through this process that I'm going to unravel here. It's going to question the paradigm of what you do in your life, why you do it, and then show you a better path that actually allows you to do more, be more, accomplish more than just living inside of that box. Okay? And so in this, we have experiences throughout our life. We're born, when you're a baby, your biggest desire, love and connection with your parents. But what happens is we have experiences that they don't tell us. You're not going to have, a parent that says, I no longer love you and no longer want to connect with you because you did X, Y, Z. A parent's not going to just say that out of their mouth. Your friends aren't just going to say that, but we have experiences that make us believe, okay, I did this and I got less love and connection when I did that, so I need to not do that anymore. And what that does is that creates these experiential truths. If you listen to my podcast that I talk about how to, do the impossible, breaking through limitations, it's all about that. We have these experiential truths that are telling us, okay, I experienced this, so now that created a belief inside of me that I took as truth. And so now I go out and rotate around that, and I only do things that way. I no longer experience what I did before. That way it verifies the belief in the truth that I had. So let's say that you, as a child, you made a mistake. You whatever. You did something and you felt that you didn't have love and connection from your parents, okay? You then chose, well, I'm not going to do that thing again because I want to seek out love and connection. But what happens is that creates kind of a wiring in your brain to where it creates a belief that then you believe as truth that then throughout your whole life starts to verify itself to you, okay? And so then we have experiences when we're teenagers specifically. We have young adult, like preteen, teenage, and then adult. And this is the period of when we become adults that shapes us. But so often, without guidance as well as people to help us realize this, we get kind of twisted in this. And over time, we become an adult that's just trying to prove to the world that we know what we're talking about and that we don't make mistakes. And the whole idea is this: if we can prove that we know what we're talking about, that we sound right, that we look right, that we don't do the wrong things, that we don't make mistakes, then we'll get love and connection from those that we're around. And this existence right here keeps us trapped. It keeps us, it's kind of like a prison of our own making. For me to get this love and connection that I've craved my entire life, you see what it is it's a dopamine hit that we get. And as long as we can keep getting that dopamine hit, we stay shrunken in that. Instead of going outside of the bounds of that and really living in a completely different realm of what's possible for us. Okay? So in this, that experience creates a belief, the truth. What you have to learn to do is you have to learn to actually separate the event from what you tell yourself about what happened. Okay? And what that is that's the belief. So you have the event, you have the truth that you believed, and you have to realize, okay, this is what happened. This is what I believed. What's the truth to replace that? And that's what I talked about. And many times, if you listen to me, I talk from a place of, biblical scripture and all of that, is that, and I hope that didn't lose some people when I mentioned, the Bible and scripture and God, because this applies whether you read that or not, but I'm going to come from that perspective. The truth that you believe is actually a lie. You're actually believing lies. So you had an experience in your life, and you actually believed lies. These are lies that you believed because of this experience. So something happened in your life, and you decided, I'm going to believe a lie about my identity, about who I am, and then live my life based on that lie. And we live our lives based on a lie just to get love and connection from others. And so that lie that we tell ourselves is, well, if I don't do everything perfect, everything's going to fall apart, everything's going to make a mistake, I'm going to fail, blah, blah, blah. If I don't sound right to people, they're going to discredit me, they're not going to want to listen to what else I have. And this deep-seated desire is just that, love and connection. And you allow that to actually control everything that you do, and we live in this place, and you can look at actions that you do that aren't serving you come from this place. And so let's take a look here. When I had my conversation with Matt, I tried explaining it to him from this perspective, and it didn't quite sync. So I had to come at it from a reverse angle. Okay, so he's trying to launch this training, but he's having trouble getting it off the ground. And I realized, well, he's so worried about explaining it perfectly to people and sounding smart and being right that he's missing out on helping another person reach their goals. And we do this often. We're so afraid of sounding right and saying all the right things that we actually don't even do the very thing that's inside of us that will help reach our goal. We're so worried about getting how others perceive me as right, truthful, smart, that we choose to not do the very thing that we should that will help us reach our goals because we care more about sounding smart, looking right, saying the right things, being perfect. It's actually a place of pride. And that pride comes from that deep-seated need to have love and connection in all interactions. And everything that you do, you're always listening to, is somebody verifying me? Is somebody validating me? And this gets dark. People go down a dark path just to seek validation from others. And you have to take a look at, what are you doing in your life? Are you doing it because you have a goal to do something great? Okay, well, this is your why. So is your why just to validate you, or for you to help not just validate others, but help raise them up to a higher level? And if our whys are just to validate us, to validate that what we believe is true, one of the best examples of this is people that have relationship struggle with dating or marriages. They're trying to validate that what they believe is true, so they repeatedly do something that validates their belief. Because what we care about is, I'm right, another person is wrong, as the most important thing in us. And this becomes this addiction that controls every aspect of our lives. Sounding right, looking smart, being perfect. Because we had this experience through time when we were a child, when we were 9-10 years old, a teenager, junior high, high school, young adult, even adulthood, up into our 30s, our 40s. And all of it is creating these experiences that we are just seeking validation. And so one of the hardest things for people to do, one of the hardest lives to live that looks good to us, is to live a life that is only focused on validation. Yet so often, many of us live our lives from the perspective of, how can I be validated in that what I believe is true? And we do things. We talk to people. We say certain things. We actually don't say truth in a situation, and we avoid living the life that we know to be true, that we know that we were created for, just to get validation. And when your why is all about validation, you're limited in your impact and how far you can grow. Now, there's great people that do great things purely out of a sense of validation. Okay? They've done great things. But there's a way to actually unlock and break out of this. I believe that validation is kind of like a prison that is, it's a lock, and there's a, it's locked tight. You can't get out of it unless you decide that your why is bigger than just validation, that your why is bigger than just validating you to get love and connection. Okay? And what happens is, a lot of people, when they realize this, they discover this. There's a great example of this, is this idea that basically it's a con that we run. We run a con in our lives that we actually con others and ourselves out of this. And most people run this con all the time. I ran the con today myself when I recorded that first podcast. Before I started this podcast, I ran this con. So I don't want you to think that, I'm this guru that's not doing this. We do it all the time. That's the thing. We run the con all the time. And the con is this: I will sacrifice what I was made for, what my destiny is, what my calling is, what my purpose is, for validation. And we allow our need for love and connection, which is actually not a bad need, by the way. Instead of just wanting to receive it, 10 times greater comes when we give it, when we give love and connection to others, and then they reciprocate. This is where the idea that you give more than you ask back comes from, giving more value. And that's my goal behind this. I get more back for my goals when I give 10 times more to you guys that are listening to this. And that's, it's still a con. My con is, I'm going to give you a ton of great content for free in hopes that one day, if I offer something that's even of greater value to buy, maybe you'll buy from me. And I even admit to that up front, But in this, we live our lives to seek validation, and we sacrifice truth just for the con of validation. We're trying to get love and connection from other people so much, and it matters so much to look right, sound right, do everything perfect, that we sacrifice what we were created for, what God called us to, what's inside of us to go after. And in that, when you realize that, we run into an identity crisis where we're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't even know why I do what I do. I don't even know why I exist. And sadly, I get that. And this is different for other people. You know, when we finally realize this, wow, my whole life has pretty much been a con, trying to get love and connection from other people by doing the very thing that I don't want to do just to validate myself and keep myself trapped in a box of what I can get, love and connection and selfishness. And yet many people don't even realize this. And it comes in very sneaky ways, you know, having to be right versus wrong, having to validate that we're right versus wrong, validating that we're smart and not dumb, validating that we're perfect and not a failure. All of this. Validating those things, because when we can validate those things, we then get the dopamine hit of love and connection. That says, okay, they validated me, now I'm loved. You know, people do this even with their physical bodies, with sex. This is where, you know, even sex addiction, all kinds of that stuff comes from, to get love and connection. People will do things to make money, to feel love and connection. It's whatever that is, you know. It's unique for all of us how we do it. We will sacrifice what we were created for just to be validated by even our parents, just to be validated by our friends, our family, you know, just to be validated by our spouse, whatever that is. Instead of doing the very thing that we were created for, we actually choose, you know, and it's funny, I say that with our spouse. That's one of the sneakiest places. You see, in a marriage, for me, it's not about how I can validate myself. If all I'm seeking is validation from my wife all the time, I'm not loving her the way that I was created to, the way that I should, because all I care about is what can I get out of it, you see? And that's the example of that. And we do that with interactions with other humans, with our bosses, with our people at church, our parents, our family, our friends, and we've done that our whole lives. And you'll notice there's not one person that's exempt from this. And if you think you're exempt from this, leave a comment, send me a message, post in the Grow Your Life community. Sometimes it's sneaky, is what it is what I'm saying is you might not think you do because it's sneaky. Your situation might be unique. But what it is we're just trying to prove that we don't make mistakes, that we do everything perfect, that we're smart, that we're valued, that we're loved, that we have connection with people. And the validation tells us you're now loved. When people validate us, it tells us you're loved. You have connection now with people because they just validated you. And we miss out on all that is available in life, in our life, what we were created for because of validation from other people. And we don't ever go out there and we don't ever create the life that we were meant to in that. Now, this is where an identity crisis comes up. People are like, well, if that's true, my life doesn't, you know, who am I? I don't even know who I am. And I know what that feels like. I know that's a scary place. You know, we let even fear control us. One of the greatest things that I heard a long time ago is that, you know, the people that you're afraid of, they're actually 10 times more fearful of what you think about them than what they think about you. And we're all having this perspective of where we're worried about what other people think to validate ourselves. And we live in this cycle. And it becomes this cycle of where we experience something, it creates a belief, we create a belief that's actually a lie, but we hold on to it as truth, and then we live our lives based on that lie was truth, just to validate ourselves, just to validate that we don't make mistakes, that we don't fail, just to receive love and connection. And it's vicious. It's terrible. And even talking about this, it makes me tingle a little bit. I'm like, ugh, it's nasty. How do we get out of this? How do we break free from this? How do we let go from it? There's two schools of thought. Is that basically up to this point, if all you do is to get love and connection, to validate yourself, everything you've done up to this point doesn't really mean anything. Okay? Now, in that, the meaning behind it is what you gave it. It means that you got love and connection, but you have to realize that that's all that it's meant to you. And so in this, we can realize that we can actually choose to do things differently in our lives, to go after what we were created for. And I believe that we were all created with a purpose. If you don't believe that we were created, this still applies, but basically it just means that anything that you've done up to this point means nothing. And so go out there and create something of yourself. But I believe that there's something bigger than that. We can either create something of ourselves, but all that does is that further just validates us. We still hit these levels of validation. But when we realize that there's something bigger than us, greater, and we partner with the divine calling that God has put on our lives, our purpose, we realize our identity is not validation. Our identity is not what other people think about us. Our identity is not what we do. But rather, we were created. We can then create from there and flow from there. And what this does is this gives us the liberty to go back and be like a child. And there's actually, scripture about this. Be like a child. Truly I tell you, unless you become like little children, you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 18:3. And a child relies on their parents. That love and connection. They don't create it themselves. And when we realize we're never going to get validated enough from other people to reach where we're going, it allows us to do one of two things. We realize we've already been validated by God that created us. We don't need to try or do anything. In fact, we can't do enough to be validated by God. He's already done it. We can then flow from that place and partner with heaven to go after our destiny and our calling. And that's what I believe. But if you don't believe in that, stop worrying what other people think and just create your life. Just create it how you see it inside of you. Stop worrying about saying all the right things, doing it all perfect. There's nothing you can do, in fact, that's perfect enough. So why would you live a life to where that's all you care about is getting validated from other people? And when we realize this, when we realize this very thing, that when our need is just personal love and connection that we can get from others, and we decide to no longer live our lives based on how can I validate myself, but rather how can I give more? How can I give love and connection to other people? How can I even help not just validate others, but teach them this and help raise them up? Our interactions with other people change. Our why changes. When our why is no longer how can I get love and connection, but rather how can I create the life and design my life to live the way that I was created and what I was created for. You see, that's what it is. When our why is just validation, you have this whole big life that we were created for, but we're living inside of the tiny box of validation, which then gives us love and connection. And we never go outside the bounds of what validates us. And when we do, it's scary. We don't get validated immediately. And when we instantly run back to that little place that validates us, that says you're right, you're correct, you're truthful, when in fact what was created for us What we were created for is that much bigger than that. And when we realize that our why up to this point has just been validation, has just been love and connection, we realize what we've been doing up to this point probably isn't what we were created for. It was this artificial image of what we wanted, of what felt good, of what validated us. And our whole life up to this point has led up to, how can I just keep getting love and connection and validation from people? We realize that that's empty. And we realize that right there is meaningless. That up to this point, it doesn't mean anything. And it's convicting. And we realize, wow, I haven't been doing what I was made for. I haven't been doing what my purpose is. I'm realizing we have a choice, actually. You see, a choice isn't when we weigh and we compare. It's actually realizing, being grateful for, wow, I was created, I was given all the tools I need to live this life. When we compare other people to get our happiness, we're just trying to get validation that we're right, that we have love and connection. But when we realize that there's a choice, it's not just a pro or con. I either get validated here or I don't, so I'm going to choose what validates me the most. You instead choose the one that matches the life that you're creating for yourself, the life that you are creating. And that's co-laboring. What I believe is, either people, they don't believe in God, they create their future, they create their life. You don't have to live inside the box of validation. You're able to create that. And then, for me, I want to co-create with God, co-labor, co-author the life that I live, not just for validation, but what would God have me do? I will take a second seat, a passenger seat, and let God take the wheel. And that's when we start to live out God's plan. We live out God's destiny in our life. And many times when we do that, when we step outside the bounds of validation, we step outside what only gives us love and connection, when our why is bigger than that, when our why is, how can I live the life that I was created for? Or how can I create the life that I want to live for myself, rather than just what gives me love and connection and validation? We realize we've been living inside this little tiny box, this little tiny prison. And outside of the bounds of that is infinite possibilities. There's infinite possibilities. You see, nothing is impossible. With people, in our humanness, there are impossibilities that we see, what we can see. But we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what is outside of those realms, what is outside of that. And outside of that is the possibility of what we were created for, what is possible. And yet we live in this little tiny locked-in prison of validation, proving that we're right, proving we know what we're talking about, proving to other people, instead of just realizing, wow, I've been living my life based on a lie, based on experiences of what happened to me when I was younger. And when we can separate the event from the truth, from the story that we tell ourselves, this is what happened, this is what I believed, it's usually a lie, what's the truth? And we replace that lie with truth. That truth is what is outside of validation. And then we realize, wow, I've only been living this big, when actually there's a much bigger world out there available to me. And I can do anything. I can accomplish anything. I can create anything. I can... nothing that I've been doing up to this point, this whole box that I've created for myself, that I've lived in, was self-imposed, and is my own thoughts were limiting me, because all I cared about was, how can I get validated by other people? How can I get love and connection? But when we choose, when we realize that the love and connection that we've been craving, it's ingrained inside of us. When we realize there's nothing that we can do to validate ourselves enough, to get enough love and connection, to feel satisfied, and that our whole life, that a life that only seeks after validation, that only seeks after love and connection is actually one that is unfulfilled, that is not fulfilling of what we were created for, what our calling and destiny is, we can start to then exit that prison. We actually have the key to unlock it and to exit outside of it and realize, wow, there's this whole world that I just have to step into. You see, a lot of people think that they have to transform themselves. Actually, what it is you're actually stepping from your current dimension of reality that you live in, and that dimension is your whole life up to this point, and realizing that your life in the future is outside of this whole realm of just seeking significance, validation, love, and connection, and that other people care about this as well. And that when you can give love to other people, you can help raise them up higher, and we can go further, and we can do more together and accomplish more together than just what can we get out of it ourselves. That's why the whole idea of just selfishness, what can I get out of it, just to validate myself, is an empty, meaningless existence. And in that, when we realize nothing we can do is enough, and we realize there's a whole world outside of what we believed up to this point, what we've thought to be true, what we've created, what we've fabricated ourselves to live inside of the box of these experiences, of not making mistakes, of not getting invalidated, of not being harmed, of not being hurt, of not doing anything wrong, of not saying the wrong thing, of not sounding dumb. And our whole existence is just in that box. And we actually are vulnerable enough to open up the lock. We open up. We're not afraid to make mistakes and then learn from them. We're not afraid to go outside of what validates us. That then allows us to step into a realm of possibility that we never thought was possible. And we live in that. And that's actually the whole world that we were created for. We were created for this. Yet we choose, because love and connection is so important to us, to live inside of this. And when you realize, and this is where, you realize that nothing you do can get you enough love and connection, but that rather you're already good enough, that you're already made perfect, that you're already enough. And you realize that there's a world of infinite possibility that God has for you, and you walk in that, and you choose to take a step forward in that, and you choose to walk in love. That's when we can then co-labor with God to create the impossible, and what was impossible inside of validation, just human love and connection, is now possible when we get our love and connection from the creator of the universe. And we realize that God loves us, that nothing is impossible with God. We can choose to create the meaning that we want out of life, or we can choose to partner with what created all of meaning. And that's what I've chosen to do. And in that, and we realize we partner with that. Nothing is impossible. And we're able to then create what's inside of us, totally separated from what validates us, because it's what we were made for, what we were created for, what our purpose was. And when our why becomes bigger than just what validates me, our why becomes bigger than just what gives me love and connection, and we find our why as, wow, I want to go do this because this. One of my biggest whys is actually just helping other people get this stuff. Understand that validation, love, and connection as their only why is a prison that they're living in, and that instead they're never going to get rid of that love and connection thing, but they need to get it from not just other people, but really realize when they can connect their spirit with God and realize that God loves them, but they've been avoiding that there's so much more possibility out there when we can connect with God, when we realize God created us with a purpose, when we were created We were already given everything that we needed to succeed, but inside of us, we made these choices. How can I do this on my own? When we decide to let that go and become like a child and just fall into the hands of God and let Him take us further, we're able to do and accomplish more, not just by the utility of it, but actually together with God. We can create. There's nothing that is impossible for us, ourselves, humanly. When we realize that we're never going to get enough love and connection from other people, that there's nothing that we can do to get more love from God, that God has already showered love upon us. And then when we accept that as a gift, instead of saying, no, I'll do it on my own, we accept that free gift, nothing is impossible. Now, this isn't a talk on salvation, resurrection, Jesus. I believe in all of that too. But what I'm talking about specifically is in our natural realm of what we do every single day and the choices we make and the decisions we make and the actions we make. Are they referenced around just what validates us? Are they referenced around just what creates love and connection? Are they referenced around what other people think about us, them saying you did a good job or you didn't, you made a mistake or you didn't, you're perfect or you're not? When we let all that go and we realize we can never be perfect enough, we can never get validated enough to feel accomplished. When we actually realize that, when we realize that life of just seeking validation, just seeking being enough is meaningless, we can create so much more. And that's where it unlocks. There's this comfort zone of validation that we live in. But when we open up that and completely eliminate it from our lives, when we eliminate the need for validation, when we eliminate that we do to get, we can then be to do. So what it is you can never do enough to then become great. But when we realize, you see, we're doing all of this just to get love and connection. We're doing all this to get love and connection from people, from God, whatever. When we realize you actually can't do enough ever, that allows us the freedom to then go do what's inside of us, what we were created for, what we were made for, and realize that, A, I'm not going to ever do enough. So I might as well just do what I was made for and go with the flow and let God take the wheel, Jesus take the wheel in our lives and direct our footsteps and walk down that path. We can either create a life on our own, eventually burn out in our own strength, or we can partner with heaven and realize the creator of the universe created us in His image, and those who choose to accept the free gift of salvation have God's Spirit inside of them. We can create, we can accomplish anything, we can do anything on the planet Earth. And we come from that place, infinite possibilities exist. When we live in a place, an existence that is only trying to validate that we are right, that we are perfect, that we do good things, that we're enough, we're limited by the bounds of what validates us. But when we realize we're never going to get enough validation from other people, from what we do, and that God has already validated us, we just have to accept it, nothing is impossible. And then we can then step outside of that and go further, go where we were called, go after our destiny, go towards where we were meant to go from the time that we were created, from when we were born. And even though life told us we weren't good enough, told us we weren't smart enough, told us we weren't perfect, and told us that we had to be these things to be validated, to be worth, to have value, that none of that value matters anymore, and that nobody can validate you enough. Nobody can validate you more than God already has. It's huge. When we realize that nothing we do is going to validate us enough, we can do 10 times greater because we're partnering with what's possible, with what God has already set apart, what God's already said, this is what I made you for. And we start to recognize that. You see, a lot of times we're blinded to what is possible. We're blinded to the plans that God has available to us because we're loving the little tiny comfort zone of validation, the little tiny comfort zone that we've been living in. God says, look, I have all of this for you. Here it is. But we can't see it because we're inside of this box of validation. We're inside of this trying to get it from God or trying to get it from other people, and we're saying, I'd rather have this smaller life, this sandcastle, instead of the massive kingdom that you've already given me the keys to. And when we can choose that, wow, this little sandcastle it's just a sandcastle. It'll be washed away by water. We can unlock the possibilities that are available to us and live in, and that's what's called kingdom living. That's what's called living in the kingdom of heaven. We do certain things not because, we were validated enough, but rather because that's the choice to do them. Nobody can tell you what you can or can't do. No human can. Not even God can tell you what you can or can't do. God won't force you to do anything. You have free will. You can choose to or not to. But our free will, we limit ourselves inside of the box of what validates us, instead of realizing that doesn't mean anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to partner with heaven, with God, what God created me for, and live a path for His will. Or we create our own alternate validation. We just make the bounds of our validation bigger. So what I've seen a lot of people do, they're like, they get this, so they just make their bounds of validation bigger until they keep getting validated bigger and bigger. And again, that's the hard path. But there's an easy path. And it's actually called striving for rest. Striving to enter into rest. And there's a verse, Hebrews 4:11. Let us therefore make every effort to enter into rest, so that no one will perish by following their example of disobedience. And so the idea is this: strive to enter into the rest of God. Be diligent to enter into the rest. We co-labor by actually laying down our own selfish ambitions and allow God to take the wheel, direct our footsteps, and then realize, even if I don't get validated by doing this, I'm following the call that God has had on my life. And we're actually able to see it. So a lot of people, they're like, oh, I don't know what the call of God has had on my life. I don't know what I was created for. I don't know what I was made for. I don't know what I should do. It's because any part that you don't know what you should do, that you don't know what God's called you to do, is an area of your life that you're still seeking validation from other people for what you do. And so you have to look at that. You have to look at, why am I seeking validation for this thing? Why am I seeking to be validated by others? And I'm not walking in what I was created for. I'm not walking in what I was made to do. And this is unique for everybody. I can't prescriptionize this. I can't write a doctor's prescription, especially in a podcast where I'm not able to hear other people's scenarios. Many times when I talk to people in our group, over DMs, over Messenger, over coaching calls, when I hear what they're going through, I can hear, okay, you're validated by looking smart, sounding smart, doing this. What you need to do is realize you need to just say the truth, speak the truth, walk out what you were created for, and stop living so small and in a box of what validates you. When we stop living in the box of what validates us, we can do the impossible, and we can create the life that we were created for. We can live the life that we were created for and do things that nobody else has done before. Co-creating, co-authoring the future, co-authoring history, and pulling from the dimension of what's possible into the dimension of our reality to do the impossible, and that's where infinite possibilities come from. And so take a look inside of you. What are those things? What are those areas? What are those areas that you live in to be validated, to get love and connection because of something happened, an experience, you're believing a lie that you think is truth right now, which, by the way, so when I say it's a lie, you're actually going to think it's a truth. Well, this is why I can't do this. Well, no, that's actually a lie. What's the truth? Well, I don't want to not do this because this will happen. I don't want to choose this because I might lose my job, or I might lose friends, or I might lose family. And yet, those that are around us, those that are our cheerleaders, they live this themselves. They seek out this validation. And when we realize that just living in this realm of validation is a tiny box, we just live in it. We're just it's so small. We realize it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. Validation is a life and existence that is unfulfilled. And at the end of our life, at least all the people could say about it is, at least we validated him. At least he was validated. And so in that, when you realize that actually doesn't matter, validation doesn't matter, we can then do things that may not validate us or short term don't validate us for the greater, for the bigger goal. And we can give love and connection to other people. Instead of trying to get it, we give it. We give it to others. We give it by stuff like podcasts, stuff like teaching, creating products. If you're in business, creating a product, creating something that helps another person reach their goals. And when you do this, when you design your life in a way of not just how can I get validated, many times it could be money. Money validates us that, oh, my idea was good. But instead, realizing I'm going to choose to do this. I'm going to choose to stick the path. We can create infinite possibilities for ourselves, for those around us, for the world. We're able to then and then when we partner, not just for ourselves, not just how can we create a bigger validation box, but rather how can we live out the calling, live out the destiny, what God created us for, and walk in kingdom. And realize we were already made perfect. God has already given us his love. He has so much prepared for us, so much greater than what we could ever create ourselves. We're able to partner with that, and we actually let go of our own strength and doing it in our own might. And realizing, wow, there's 100 times greater that God had for us. And yet, I lived a small existence just to be validated. When we let go of that, we let that go, we release it, and we walk in what we were created for, what we were made for, and realize we were made to worship, to give love, and we receive God's love. And it's a relationship back and forth. It's not just a knowledge, but we become closer to God, to the point that God is inside of us and his presence is around us at all times. And then everything that we do flows from that place. We're able to do the impossible, accomplish the impossible, and create the future. Not just because of what happened in the past, but because we see that's the future, that's where we're going. We're going to create that. We're going to co-labor on earth and do what God created us for. We can do anything. We can accomplish anything. And I don't want to be the person that prescriptionizes what that looks like for you. For you, what that might be is that might be going on a missions trip. That could be quitting your job, changing your job, or going after that promotion, going after that next level, learning a new skill, realizing that what they told you in the past didn't matter, that no human being can tell you what you can or can't do, that rather you can choose to do or not do. And then when we partner with heaven and our goals are dictated by God's plan for our life, we live in purpose, we walk in destiny, and we live out what we were created for. Infinite possibilities exist for us, and nothing is impossible in that realm. Nothing is impossible even creating it for yourself. You can create anything that you can see or imagine. It's not impossible. But when you're doing it just to get validation, that's all you're ever going to get. But when you do it to give love and connection, when you do it to partner with heaven, when you do it to live out your destiny, your calling, what you were made for, impossible things become possible in your reality. And we live from the future backwards instead of the past forwards. We're able to look at the future, say, I'm going to pull that into this present reality, instead of, well, that's my past, I'm going to try to run away from it into the future. And those who create the future, those who write history, those that do great things, live from this place, not seeking validation, but rather, I have a vision, I have a calling on my life, and this is where I'm going. And nothing is going to get in my way and stop it. Not even validation, not even my own desire for love and connection. And when we realize that nothing we do is ever going to validate us enough to feel significant, we can do the impossible. We can accomplish the impossible. We can live out the calling and destiny that God has put on our lives. And in that affects our business, our lives, our personal lives, our family, our relationships, how we do things, because we're not just doing things to get validated, but rather, how can I live the life that I was created for? So I hope this encourages you. If you have questions about this, if you have thoughts, ideas, leave a comment, post in the group, post in the Grow Your Life community, send me a DM, whatever. If you haven't done the hashtag Grow Your Life giveaway, I do coaching sessions on the phone with people. I get on the phone and I work through stuff with people, either this stuff or in their business. I also do business consulting on advertising, marketing, how to get more sales, copywriting. Leave hashtag Grow Your Life on my Instagram feed. Within the first 10 minutes of me posting on Instagram, hashtag Grow Your Life. I pick one winner each week on Sunday that wins. You can only win once per month. I believe in you, and I know that you can do this. I know that you can go after the impossible and do the impossible. But you got to get past this stuff and find your why, and realize your why has to be bigger than just what validates me. Your why has to be bigger than just what makes me feel love and connection. But rather, my why is, what was I made for? What was I created for? What do I want to do? And then aligning your goals and vision with what was I created for. By the way, you can literally do anything. You don't even have to do just what you were created for, quote unquote. Feel like, oh, well, I'm doing it wrong. Because all that is now you're still trying to get validated by God. You can't get validated enough, even by the Creator. God's already validated you. You have love. You just have to accept it as a free gift. And then live from that place. Your life being an offering of worship. And so it's a whole nother topic right there. But I believe that everybody can do this, and that there's infinite possibilities that exist to create and partner with heaven in the future and do the impossible. Grow your life, everybody. Leave hashtag Grow Your Life on my post on Instagram. In the first 10 minutes of me posting, or on any of my Instagram posts, I announce the winners on my Instagram. Every Sunday, you can do this. I really just want everybody to get this. I want them to realize that nothing is impossible, that you can do the impossible, that you can accomplish the impossible. And you stop seeking validation as your only why. And you make your why bigger than just how can I get validated. Have a good one, everybody. Grow your life, and we will talk soon.